Have you ever been in a moment where a single choice could change not only your life, but the lives of everyone around you? Imagine being a woman working endless shifts as a waitress, unseen and underestimated, only to cross paths with a billionaire drowning in his own despair. One act of compassion, helping a stranger home on a rainy night, pulled her into a storm of corruption, intimidation, and choices no one should face alone. What would you do if that stranger handed you the keys to a crumbling hotel tied to powerful men who wanted your silence? Would you walk away, or would you stand and fight, knowing the price could be everything you hold dear? This is the story of Amara Johnson, a black waitress whose quiet strength was tested in ways she never asked for, but whose courage turned ashes into light. As you listen, I invite you to not just hear her journey, but to imagine your own, because in the end, it asks us all the same question. What would you do if this story touches you? Please like, share, and subscribe so more voices and stories like this one can be heard. The rain in the South Bronx had a way of stripping away illusions. It came down hard, splashing against cracked sidewalks and broken street lamps, filling potholes until they looked like shallow ponds under the dim glow of neon signs. On that particular night, just past 3 a.m, Amara Johnson was heading home after another long shift at the Velvet Lantern Inn. Her sneakers were damp, her hoodie pulled tight around her face. She wasn't looking for trouble. She was just trying to make it through another night. But trouble found her anyway. Across the street, a man in an expensive charcoal coat stood unsteady near the curb. He looked like he had wandered out of the wrong neighborhood, too polished, too wealthy, too unaware. His shoes sank slightly into the puddles, his head tilted forward, as if the weight of his thoughts was too heavy for his body. And then, with a dull thud that echoed across the wet asphalt, his legs gave out. He collapsed face first onto the ground. For a moment, Amara froze. In the Bronx, hesitation could cost you. But before she could even move, she noticed 2 men leaning against the shuttered liquor store across the street. Hooded jackets, sharp eyes. They noticed him, too. Their posture changed from casual to predatory. And then they began crossing the street with slow, deliberate steps. Amara's heart kicked hard in her chest. She didn't know the stranger. She didn't know his story. But she knew the look in those men's eyes. Nothing good was coming. She darted forward. Her sneakers splashed through the gutter, rain soaking into her jeans. She reached the man just as he groaned faintly, trying to push himself up. Up close. He was older, probably in his 50s. His hair was slicked back but now drenched, clinging to his forehead. A luxury watch clung to his wrist, and a sleek leather wallet lay just inches away. "Sir," Amara said quickly, crouching down, "you can't stay here. Come on." He didn't respond clearly, only murmured something slurred and heavy with alcohol. The men from across the street were closer now, 10 steps away, then 8. "Nope, not tonight," Amara whispered to herself. She hooked her arms beneath the man's shoulders and, with strength she didn't know she had, lifted. He was heavy dead weight, but his legs stumbled just enough to help. She dragged him toward the side entrance of the Velvet Lantern, the old hotel where she worked. They slipped inside just as the 2 strangers reached the sidewalk. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. Inside, the hallway buzzed with the faint hum of dying light bulbs. The tile floor was slick beneath their shoes. Amara lowered him onto a bench near the laundry room, trying to steady her breath. He slumped to the side, head lolling, eyes half shut. The smell of whiskey hit her like a wall. "Great," she muttered, brushing wet hair out of her face. What am I supposed to do with you now?" She picked up his wallet, not to steal, but to find out who the hell he was. Inside were credit cards, crisp bills, and a gold-trimmed business card. Gregory Harlow. Her breath caught. She knew that name. Everybody in the city knew that name. Gregory Harlow was no ordinary man. He was a billionaire investor, the kind of person who moved markets with a single phone call. What he was doing in the South Bronx at 3 a.m. was anyone's guess. "Daniel," Amara called softly toward the front desk. Daniel Brooks, the night clerk, peeked around the corner. His eyes went wide. Holy hell, that's him. Amara nodded. "Yeah, and he's barely conscious." They both stood there for a moment, the reality pressing in. If word got out, if someone snapped a picture, if something worse happened, the headlines would write themselves. She made a decision. Pulling her phone from her hoodie pocket, she ordered a cab. "I'm not letting him crash here. And I'm definitely not letting some random driver take advantage of him." When the cab pulled up 15 minutes later, Amara helped Gregory into the back seat. She folded a 50 from her own wallet, pressing it into the driver's hand before he could speak. "Don't charge him. Just take him home safe." The driver raised an eyebrow, then nodded. Amara leaned into the back seat, fastening Gregory's belt. His head tilted toward her shoulder. His voice was faint, but his words were clear enough. "You, good people," he slurred. "Don't forget. You're the kind that matters." She didn't answer. She simply closed the door and watched as the cab disappeared into the misty streets. For a long moment, she stood there, soaked through, shivering as the rain eased to a drizzle. It was almost 4 a.m. Her shift had ended hours ago, but her night had only just begun. Back inside the inn, she stripped off her hoodie, wringing out the sleeves. She couldn't explain what had made her act so quickly. Instinct, maybe, or just a refusal to watch another person fall while the world turned away. Outside, the storm began to break. Far above the South Bronx rooftops, a faint line of dawn cracked the sky open. Quiet, steady, irreversible. Amara sat on the bench in the empty lobby, staring at the wet floor where his shoes had left muddy impressions. She whispered to herself, almost like a promise, "This night's not over. It's just the start." The following Thursday, just before the lunch rush, Amara Johnson was folding cocktail napkins at the far end of the bar. The Velvet Lantern Inn always smelled faintly of bleach and overcooked bacon around midday. But that morning there was something else in the air. Restlessness. A sense that the week had stretched far too long. That survival in this corner of the Bronx was less about working shifts and more about keeping your head above water. Amara had nearly convinced herself that the night in the rain had been a strange dream. A fevered blur she could tuck away, like so many other odd encounters that passed through the inn. Gregory Harlow was a name for the headlines, not for her reality. She had delivered him safely into a cab and told herself that was the end of it. The bell above the entrance chimed. Sharp. Clear. She didn't bother to look up right away. Probably Mr. Travers again, the cranky regular who ordered iced tea with extra lemon and left no more than a nickel for a tip. She pasted on her polite smile out of habit, but when she raised her head, the smile froze. There he was, Gregory Harlow, dressed in a crisp navy suit, his hair combed back, his posture tall and assured. No trace of the rain-soaked, half-conscious figure she had dragged off the sidewalk a week earlier. The bar went silent. Conversations paused mid-sentence. Even Daniel Brooks peeked over the front desk computer, his eyes wide. Amara's fingers clenched tighter around the napkin she was folding. "I believe I owe you a proper thank you," Gregory said, his voice calm but carrying a weight that commanded attention. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. Amara leaned against the counter, refusing to show the flicker of nerves that tightened her stomach. "Looks like you're walking just fine. I'd say the cab did its job." Gregory stepped closer. "It wasn't the cab that saved me that night. I didn't do anything anyone else wouldn't have done," she replied, arms folding across her chest, a shield against the intensity of his gaze. "Then it's a shame no one else did." His words landed heavier than she expected. His eyes scanned the room, then returned to her. "I looked into you, Miss Johnson." Her heart sank. "I'm sure you did. You dropped out of college to care for your mother. You've worked 2, sometimes 3 jobs at a time. You've covered guest damages from your own pocket. You even paid for my cab fare when I was too far gone to notice." The napkin in her hand tore cleanly in 2. She didn't like how naked his words made her feel. "You're making a lot of assumptions," she said flatly. "No," he answered gently. "I'm stating facts." A silence stretched between them, the kind that made everyone else in the room pretend not to eavesdrop while their ears strained to catch every word. Then Gregory reached inside his coat and pulled out a slim leather folder. He set it on the bar between them. "I own this property," he said evenly, "and several others. But this one has been failing for years. I was prepared to liquidate it. Poor management, low returns. The Velvet Lantern has been on the chopping block." Amara stiffened. Her chest burned. "If you came here to fire me, you're overdressed." Gregory shook his head. "I didn't come to fire you. I came to offer you ownership." The napkin scrap slipped from her hand and floated to the floor. For a heartbeat, she thought she misheard. What her voice rose higher than she intended. "You're the only reason this place hasn't collapsed. I've reviewed the numbers. I've watched the surveillance from that night. You didn't have to do what you did, but you did." "This is insane," she whispered. "People don't just give away hotels, especially not to waitresses from the Bronx. People don't usually save billionaires from freezing to death in the street." Gregory countered softly. Her pulse raced, disbelief rattling inside her chest. She wanted to laugh. She wanted to scream. Instead, she asked, "So this is what some rich man's redemption tour?" His smile faded. "This isn't about guilt. It's about recognition. I don't need your recognition." "No," he said, quieter now, "but you deserve it." The folder remained between them, untouched, humming with possibilities too wild to trust. "I need time," she finally managed, her throat tight. "You've got it," Gregory said, sliding the folder an inch closer. "Everything's in there. Legal transfer, debt clearances, renovation grants. My lawyer will walk you through every detail. If you say no, I'll respect it. But I hope you won't." He paused, his eyes steady on hers. "There's something about you, Amara. You don't wait for permission to do what's right. That's rare. And then, just like that." He turned and walked out. The bell above the door chimed once, then silence. For a long moment, Amara couldn't move. Her breath caught between disbelief and anger, between temptation and fear. The entire bar was still, the staff pretending to look busy, the guests pretending not to stare. Finally, Lena Carter, the morning housekeeper, leaned over with a rag in her hand and muttered, "Girl, you gonna open that thing or what?" Amara's eyes stayed locked on the folder. "I don't even know what's in it." "Looks like a miracle to me," Lena said. "Might want to see if it's real." That night, long after the guests were gone and the bar was silent, Amara sat alone in the lobby. The folder lay heavy in her lap. She didn't open it right away. Her phone buzzed, but it wasn't Gregory. It was the care home, reminding her of her mother's appointment. Life didn't stop just because some billionaire decided to upend her world. Finally, with hands that trembled, she opened the folder. Inside were signed documents, notarized and stamped. Transfers, debt clearances, renovation plans under her name. And at the bottom, a handwritten note. "You gave a stranger dignity. Let this give you the same. G.E." Amara closed the folder quickly, pressing her palm against it. Her chest ached. It was too much, too impossible, too dangerous to believe. She whispered into the empty room, as if to anchor herself. No one gives away power like this. Not without strings. But even as she said it, her eyes kept drifting back to the folder. And something in her heart whispered back, maybe, just maybe. Amara did not sleep that night. She lay on her futon in her small apartment above the laundromat, the folder spread open beside her like a dangerous secret she hadn't asked to keep. The hum of the dryers below seeped through the floorboards, a steady rhythm that usually lulled her to sleep. Tonight, it only reminded her of how fragile the world could be, how easily something could spin out of control. By morning, she had convinced herself it had to be a trick. Billionaires didn't hand over hotels out of gratitude. There had to be some hidden clause, some buried condition. Yet the documents looked airtight, stamped and signed by lawyers she had never met. Gregory Harlow had not made a promise he had already set the wheels in motion. When Amara walked back into the Velvet Lantern Inn that morning, she no longer felt like just a waitress. The air seemed heavier. Even the chandelier above the lobby, its crystals dulled with dust, looked like it was watching her. Daniel Brooks raised an eyebrow as she stepped behind the front desk. "You opened that folder yet?" he asked. "Yeah," she admitted, her voice low. He gave a long whistle. "So, what now?" Amara didn't answer. Instead, she pushed open the office door behind the lobby, a room she had only seen in passing, when Howard Briggs, the former manager, used to stomp out in a cloud of cigar smoke. The air inside was musty, the shelves stacked with yellowed invoices, broken chairs, and a calendar from 2012 still pinned to the wall. She shut the door behind her and stood in the silence. Then she rolled up her sleeves. For hours, she dug. She opened boxes, sorted through faded receipts, called the phone numbers listed on vendor bills. Some were disconnected. Others rang through to vague voices that hung up when she asked too many questions. By noon, a chill slid down her spine. At least 3 of the vendors listed in the hotel's books didn't exist. Elmage Cleaning Company, no tax ID, Metro Fire Systems, registered to a P.O. box in Delaware. An invoice for thousands of dollars worth of HVAC maintenance that had never happened. This wasn't neglect. This was deliberate. A mess with intention. Her stomach tightened. She called the number written on one of the documents. A robotic message answered, "This number has been disconnected." She tried another. The same result. It hit her. Then Howard Briggs had been running more than sloppy management. He had been running a scheme. She leaned back in the old office chair, its springs groaning beneath her weight, and pressed her hands to her face. What the hell did Gregory give me? The sound of footsteps pulled her from her thoughts. Lena Carter appeared in the doorway, arms crossed, a streak of flour on her apron from the staff kitchen. "You hiding back here?" Lena asked, "trying to figure out what I've gotten myself into. You look like you've seen a ghost." "Maybe I have," Amara said, sliding the stack of fake invoices across the desk. "These companies don't exist. Briggs was paying ghosts." Lena scanned the papers, her brow furrowing. "I remember Briggs talking about Briarstone Holdings. Said they were handling pest control. Never saw anyone from there in my life." The name sent a shiver down Amara's spine. Briarstone Holdings. It was scrawled across multiple invoices, always just under $5,000, a suspiciously neat pattern, as if whoever created it knew how to stay beneath red flag thresholds. She whispered, more to herself than to Lena, "This isn't just incompetence. This is laundering." That night, after everyone else left, Amara returned to the office with a thermos of black coffee and a notebook. She pulled open the rusted file cabinet Briggs had always kept locked. A few weeks earlier, she had found an old key wedged in the cushions of the lounge sofa. Now she turned it in the lock. The cabinet creaked open. Inside were dusty ledgers, handwritten, not digital records, not neat spreadsheets, old-school bookkeeping, designed to be hidden. She pulled one out, brushed off the dust, and flipped to a page marked March, Laundry Service Diversion. Her throat went dry. Transactions listed in neat cursive. Hundreds, sometimes thousands, sent to names that appeared nowhere in the electronic files. Fake contracts, mirror invoices. Her hands trembled as she realized what she was holding proof. Proof that the Velvet Lantern hadn't just been mismanaged, it had been a laundromat for dirty money. Her phone buzzed on the desk. Startling her, a text from Daniel, FYI. Some guy in a suit came by tonight asking about the new owner. Said he was a friend of Briggs. Didn't leave a card. Weird vibe. Amara's grip tightened around the ledger. She shut it, slid it into her bag, and locked the cabinet again. This wasn't just a hotel anymore. It was a battlefield. By the next afternoon, she couldn't carry the weight alone. She gathered the staff in the lobby for an unscheduled meeting. The chandelier flickered overhead, casting shadows across their faces. "I need to tell you all something," Amara began. Her voice was steady, but inside she was trembling. "I think the Velvet Lantern was used for more than just hospitality. Some of the vendors we've been paying, they don't exist. The money went somewhere else." The room was silent. Maria Lopez, the quiet housekeeper who rarely spoke above a whisper, lowered her eyes. Lena crossed her arms tighter. Daniel's jaw clenched. "Do you think Briggs was involved?" Daniel asked. "I don't know yet," Amara admitted. "But I do know this: if we try to rebuild without cleaning it out, we'll be building on poison." Lena was the first to speak. "So what do you want us to do?" Amara looked at them cooks, cleaners, clerks. They weren't detectives, but they were hers now. "I need your eyes, your ears. Stories about anything that didn't make sense, deliveries that looked shady, people who came by after hours. Write it down. Tell me, piece by piece. We'll figure it out." For a moment, no one moved. Then Maria lifted her hand hesitantly. "A few months ago, there was a man, called himself Victor, drove a black BMW, met with Briggs late at night, said they were talking about expansions. I didn't trust him." Amara's pulse quickened. Victor. The name fit too neatly, too sharply. She added it to the growing list in her notebook. That night, she returned to the office. Every folder spread across the floor like a crime scene. Names repeated: Briarstone Holdings, Nash Financial, Eastgate Logistics, each connected to invoices that smelled of fraud. By midnight, Her head ached. But the picture was clear. The velvet lantern wasn't just failing. It had been compromised for years, tied to men who thrived in the shadows. And now, by accepting Gregory's folder, she had stepped directly into their line of fire. Amara Johnson had never felt the lobby so heavy. It was as if every chandelier crystal, every dusty portrait, every cracked tile leaned on her shoulders at once. Gregory Harlow's folder still lay on her nightstand at home, but the truth of it had already seeped into her bones. Ownership was no longer maybe it was happening. The papers were filed, the documents signed. She was no longer just the waitress cleaning up broken glasses. She was, at least on paper, the owner of the Velvet Lantern Inn. But ownership was not glory. It was burden. On her second night with the ledger locked in her bag, Amara sat alone at the front desk after Daniel Brooks went home. She stared at the ledger's cover like it was a ticking bomb. Her reflection in the lobby window looked foreign tired eyes, hair tied back, the faintest tremor in her jaw. "This isn't me," she whispered. "I serve coffee. I pick up towels. I keep the peace when drunks shout too loud. That's me, not this." The silence in the empty lobby offered no comfort. A gentle knock came at the door. The sound startled her, sharp against the quiet. She checked the clock, nearly midnight. Guests rarely arrived at such an hour. Against her better judgment, she opened the door. A man in a tailored gray suit stepped inside. His presence seemed to fill the lobby, though he moved without hurry. His hair was slick, his cufflinks glimmered, and his cologne cut through the mustiness of the old hotel. His eyes, cold and deliberate, locked on hers as if he had been studying her already. "Miss Johnson." His voice was smooth, controlled, dangerous in its calm. "Yes," Amara replied, spine straightening. "My name is Victor Kane. I believe we have mutual interests." Her stomach tightened. The name was not new. Maria Lopez had spoken it only days before. "I don't think we've met," she said, her voice steady though her palms grew damp. "Not officially," Victor replied, "but I knew Howard Briggs very well, and Howard spoke highly of you." "That," so he nodded once, his gaze drifting over the dusty lobby. "He always said you had grit, that you could carry more weight than most." I see now, he wasn't exaggerating. Amara crossed her arms. "If you came here to flatter me, you wasted a trip." Victor chuckled softly, though there was no warmth in it. Straightforward. "Good. Then let's not waste time. You've inherited something complicated." The Velvet Lantern was not just a hotel. It was a hub, a node in a network that matters to people like me. Her chest tightened. "People like you," he leaned closer, his voice low, intimate yet chilling. "People who move quietly. People who make sure money finds its proper channels." Briggs understood. "I hope you will, too." Amara's throat went dry. "And if I don't," Victor's smile did not falter, "then you'll learn how lonely ownership can be." The words hung between them like smoke. Amara's first instinct was fear, a deep instinctual warning screaming at her to run, to hand the folder back to Gregory Harlow, to beg him to undo this entire nightmare. But another voice rose inside her, quieter yet stronger. The same voice that had pushed her into the rain to help a stranger. The same voice that told her dignity mattered. She straightened her spine. "I don't answer to you, Mr. Kane, and I don't plan to continue whatever arrangement Briggs had with your network." Victor's eyes darkened. His smile vanished, leaving only calculation. "Careful. Miss Johnson, integrity is noble, but nobility has a cost, sometimes more than you're willing to pay." For a long moment, neither moved. Then Victor adjusted his cufflinks, turned, and walked toward the door. Before leaving, he glanced back, his voice soft but sharp enough to slice. "Enjoy your hotel. Repaint the walls, hire new staff, but don't dig too deep. Some ghosts are better left buried." The bell above the door chimed once as he left, the sound echoing through the hollow lobby. Amara stood frozen. Her heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears. Her hands shook, but she clenched them into fists until the tremors slowed. She whispered to herself, steadying her breath, "I didn't come this far to bow now." Later that night, she gathered Lena Carter and Daniel Brooks in the back office. The ledger lay on the desk between them, its pages open like evidence in a trial. "He came here," Amara said, her voice clipped. "Victor Kane. He knows I have this. He wanted me to stay quiet." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Then he's scared. That means you're holding something real. Or it means he's going to crush me before I can do anything with it," Amara countered. Lena leaned forward, her eyes fierce. "You didn't drag yourself through years of double shifts and insults to hand this place back to crooks. If you give in, everything you've lived through means nothing. You've got the strength. Amara, I've seen it." Her words pierced Amara's doubt, but the fear didn't vanish. Instead, it sat beside her, a companion she could not shake. That night, Amara lay awake again, staring at the ceiling. Her mind raced with what-ifs. What if Victor Kane was right? What if ownership only brought ruin? What if standing up for dignity put everyone she cared for in danger? But amid the storm of questions, one thought steadied her. Gregory Harlow had chosen her because she didn't wait for permission to do what was right. If she backed down now, she would betray not just herself, but every person who relied on this place for survival. She rolled over, gripping the ledger like a shield. Tomorrow, she decided, she would stop reacting and start planning. If Victor Kane wanted silence, then truth would be her answer. The morning after Victor Kane's visit, Amara Johnson felt as though every shadow in the velvet lantern was watching her. The hallways seemed darker, the creaks in the floorboards louder, every knock on the door sharper than usual. She carried the ledger with her like a lifeline, though its weight in her bag made her feel more hunted than safe. She sat up in the old office again, the blinds drawn tight, papers sprawled across the desk. She had highlighted 3 names already Briarstone Holdings: Nash Financial, Eastgate Logistics. They appeared over and over in the records, each tied to invoices for services never rendered: pest control, financial consulting, freight deliveries. On paper, they were ordinary businesses. In reality, they were phantoms. She turned to Daniel Brooks for help. "I need someone to check addresses. See if these places even exist." Daniel frowned. "That's dangerous. Amara, if Kane knows you're looking, he already knows." She cut in. "He came here last night. Told me to stop digging, which means I'm close." Daniel exhaled, rubbing his temples. "All right, I'll do some checks. But you should be careful who else you involve. By midday." Lena Carter brought in a box of old receipts she'd saved from her cleaning closet. Briggs used to shove these in the trash. I kept a few. Didn't know why. Maybe I didn't trust him. Amara spread them out, scanning the faded ink. Some matched the phantom companies. Others listed deliveries signed by initials she didn't recognize. One in particular caught her eye: E.K. "Who's E.K.?" Amara murmured. "Not staff," Lena said, "unless it was someone Briggs kept off payroll." Amara scribbled the letters into her notebook. Another ghost, another thread. That night, Amara couldn't shake the paranoia. Every time a car slowed outside the inn, her pulse spiked. She locked the ledger in her closet, then unlocked it again 10 minutes later, needing it near her. She told herself she was imagining things, but deep down she knew Kane's warning wasn't just talk. 2 days later, Daniel returned with news. He sat at the bar, lowering his voice so guests wouldn't overhear. I checked. Briarstone Holdings is nothing but a mailbox in Jersey. Nash Financial is registered to an abandoned office in Queens. Eastgate Logistics doesn't even have a business license in the state. Amara's stomach sank. So they're all fake. Fake, but smart, Daniel said. The payments are small enough to slip under audit thresholds, spread across years. It's millions siphoned away without raising alarms. Amara pressed her hands flat on the counter, her mind spinning, and all of it tied to this hotel. That means Kane and his people aren't just using us. They're laundering through us. The words tasted bitter in her mouth. Later that evening, Maria Lopez approached her timidly, wringing her hands. Miss Johnson, I remembered something else. Amara softened her tone. Tell me, last winter, Briggs had a visitor, a man with a scar on his hand. He wore gloves, but I saw it when he took them off. He gave Briggs an envelope. Briggs looked nervous afterward, said we shouldn't talk about it. Amara noted its carefully scarred hand. Another clue, another puzzle piece. The next morning, she called Gregory Harlow. She hadn't wanted to involve him again, but the weight was growing too much. When he answered, his voice was brisk. Amara, I was expecting your call sooner. You knew, didn't you? She demanded. You knew this place was rotten before you gave it to me? A pause, then a sigh. I knew enough, but not everything. And I knew I couldn't fix it. Not the way you can. Her grip on the phone tightened. You gave me a poisoned gift. I gave you the truth wrapped in a poisoned gift, Gregory replied evenly. And I believe you're strong enough to survive it. Howard Briggs sold the Velvet Lantern piece by piece to men like Kane. If I kept it, it would stay a pawn in their game. In your hands, it has a chance to be more. His faith in her burned like both a comfort and a curse. I don't want to be in their game, she said. No one does, Gregory answered softly. But sometimes the only way out is through. When the call ended, Amara sat in silence. Through. The word echoed. Through the fear, through the lies, through the danger. That night, she gathered the staff again. The ledger lay open on the lobby table, pages fanned like battle plans. We've been used, she told them. This hotel has been a laundromat for men like Victor Kane. We can pretend we don't know, keep our heads down, and hope he spares us. Or we can fight. If we fight, it won't be easy. But at least we'll be standing for something real. Lena was the first to speak. I'm with you. Daniel nodded, though his face was tense. If we're in, we're all in. That's the only way we stand a chance. Maria hesitated, then whispered, I don't want to be scared anymore. Amara looked at each of them. She saw exhaustion, fear, doubt, but beneath it all she saw the same thing that burned inside her resolve. We fight, Amara said. We fight smart, and we fight together. As the words left her lips, thunder rolled faintly in the distance, echoing through the Bronx night. The storm wasn't just coming, it had already begun. The week passed in uneasy silence. The Velvet Lantern continued to function. Guests checked in, sheets were washed, the bar served its watery beer, but beneath the surface, every staff member felt the tension. Amara Johnson kept the ledger close, sometimes reading it at 2 a.m. when sleep refused to come. The more she studied it, the clearer the patterns became. Fake vendors, falsified maintenance, inflated costs. Howard Briggs had built a web of lies sturdy enough to last years, but webs were meant to be torn. On a rainy Thursday night, Amara was finishing the books in the office when the sound came a knock at the lobby door. Not a guest's knock. Firm, measured, certain. She stood slowly, her heart thumping. She opened the door just enough to see, and there he was again, Victor Kane. His tailored coat glistened with rain. He smiled faintly, as though they were old friends meeting for coffee. "Good evening, Miss Johnson," he said smoothly. Amara did not invite him in, but he stepped inside anyway. The bell above the door chimed once, then silence. "Working late?" he asked, glancing at the stack of papers on her desk. "Some of us actually earn our living," she replied coldly. He chuckled. "Sharp tongue. I like that. But sharp tongues cut both ways." Amara shut the office door, leaving the lobby lights dim. "What do you want?" "Kane?" He moved slowly around the room, his shoes clicking against the tile. "I want what's mine." Briggs understood that. You're making things complicated." She crossed her arms. "I'm cleaning up. That's what owners do. You're digging where you shouldn't." He stopped at the desk, resting his hand on the ledger. "This belongs to me as much as it does to you." Amara's pulse quickened. "No, this ledger is proof. Proof you used this hotel to launder money. Proof Briggs worked for you." Victor's smile never wavered, but his eyes sharpened. "Proof means nothing without power to use it. Do you have that, Miss Johnson? Do you think the police will believe a waitress turned hotel owner over me?" Her chest burned, but she refused to lower her gaze. "I believe the truth has a way of finding light." He leaned closer, his voice a low whisper. "Light can be snuffed out. People forget that." The words cut deep, but Amara didn't flinch. Inside, she fought her own fear, the voice that begged her to hand over the ledger, to let Kane win. But another voice, calmer, steadier, rose stronger. "If you yield now, you'll lose more than a hotel. You'll lose yourself." "Is that a threat?" she asked. "A reminder," Victor replied. "You've stepped into a world where nobility gets punished. I'd hate to see you regret it." With that, he tapped the ledger once, like sealing a pact, and turned to leave. Before opening the door, he added, "Think carefully, Miss Johnson. Every fight has casualties." When the door shut behind him, Amara's knees weakened. She sat heavily in the chair, gripping the desk. Fear coursed through her, but beneath it was something else, fury. The next morning, she told Lena Carter and Daniel Brooks about the encounter. Daniel slammed his fist against the counter. "We should call the cops. Report him. Everything. And tell them," what Amara asked, "that a powerful man admitted things in hints and shadows, that I found ledgers nobody wants to acknowledge without more. They'll laugh us out the door. Worse, Kane will know we tried." Lena spoke carefully. "So what's the plan?" Amara took a long breath. "We keep digging. We gather more. And when we strike, it has to be too big for him to bury." Later that day, Maria Lopez slipped into the office, her hands trembling. She carried a small envelope. "I shouldn't have kept this, but months ago, Briggs gave me cash to stay quiet about something I saw. I didn't spend it. I thought maybe you should have it." Amara opened the envelope. Inside was a folded receipt, not cash. A receipt signed with initials V, K. Her eyes widened. Proof. A link tying Victor Kane's name, however small, to the hotel's finances. She looked up at Maria, her voice steady. "You did the right thing. This could matter more than you know. That night, Amara spread everything on the office floor, ledgers, receipts, notes from staff. Piece by piece, a map emerged, and in the center of every thread was Victor Kane. She whispered to herself, more a vow than a thought, if he wants me silent, then silence is the one thing I'll never give him. The following days felt like the air before a thunderstorm, heavy, restless, waiting to explode. Amara Johnson moved through the velvet lantern like a commander patrolling a fragile fort. She noticed every flickering light bulb, every strange noise in the boiler room, every unfamiliar car idling too long outside. On Monday morning, the first strike came. The walk-in freezer, recently repaired, suddenly failed again. Hundreds of dollars in meat and produce spoiled overnight. Lena Carter stood in the kitchen with her arms crossed, staring at the dripping mess. "That ain't no accident," she muttered. By noon, a fire inspector arrived unannounced. He scribbled violations onto his clipboard, frowning as though the faded paint on the stairwell was a personal insult. "These fines will add up fast," he warned, before leaving without explanation. Daniel Brooks shook his head. "We passed inspection 3 weeks ago. This doesn't make sense." Amara felt her stomach knot, but she didn't let it show. "It makes perfect sense," she said. "Somebody's turning the screws." Tuesday, a delivery truck accidentally backed into the loading dock, shattering 2 trash bins and cracking the concrete ramp. The driver shrugged, filed no insurance report, and sped away. By Wednesday, half the staff whispered about quitting. Jenny Alvarez, the youngest waitress, approached Amara in the hallway, her eyes wide with fear. "What if they come for us next? What if they hurt somebody?" Amara placed a hand on her shoulder. "Jenny, listen to me. You are not alone. Nobody here is. That's what they want for us to break apart. But we hold together. We hold the line. You understand." Jenny nodded, though her lip trembled. That evening, Amara called a staff meeting in the dim lobby. The chandelier above buzzed weakly, but everyone came. Lena, Daniel, Maria, Jenny, even Miguel Ortiz from maintenance, who usually kept his distance. She stood in front of them, tired but unshaken. "I need to tell you the truth," she began. "What's happening isn't random. This hotel was used for laundering money under the old manager. The man behind it, Victor Kane, wants me quiet. That's why the freezer failed. Why inspectors showed up. Why trucks crash into our dock. It's intimidation. Nothing more." The room was silent, except for the hum of the vending machine. "Do you think Carl Briggs was involved?" Daniel asked quietly. Amara took a breath. "I think Briggs was the front man. But Kane is the power, and he's not used to being challenged." Miguel scoffed. "So we're supposed to fight a millionaire with what, mops and ledgers?" "No," Amara replied, "with truth, with evidence, with unity. If we keep silent, we lose everything. If we stand, we have a chance." Carla steadied stubborn. Carla crossed her arms and said, "Then we stand. What do you need us to do?" Amara's chest swelled with gratitude. She looked around the circle. "Eyes and ears. Write down anything strange you've seen, deliveries at odd hours. People Briggs met with, unusual repairs. Every detail could matter." The staff exchanged uneasy glances, but one by one, they nodded. Even Miguel muttered, "Fine. I'll keep watch on the basement. See who comes and goes." For the first time all week, Amara felt a flicker of hope, but hope didn't erase fear. That night, she sat alone in the office, papers spread like a battlefield across the floor. The ledger sat in the center, its pages heavy with ink and secrets. She traced the initials V, K, on Maria's receipt with her finger, whispering to herself, "This is enough. It has to be enough." A sudden knock startled her. Daniel poked his head in. "Sorry. Couldn't sleep. Thought I'd check on you." She smiled faintly. "Join the club." He stepped inside, leaning against the wall. "You really think we can win?" Amara paused, her voice soft but firm. "I don't know if we can win, but I know we can't surrender." The words hung between them, simple yet unshakable. The storm outside the window cracked with lightning, rattling the glass. Amara looked out at the rain streaking down and whispered to herself, "If Cain wants a war, then he'll get one, but not on his terms, on mine." The storm did not pass. It pressed heavier each day, wrapping itself around the velvet lantern like a shadow no broom could sweep away. Yet Amara Johnson had made up her mind if Victor Cain wanted her frightened into silence. He had chosen the wrong woman. She waited until Saturday evening, when the bar slowed down and the night clerk took over, before slipping into the office and closing the door. The old rotary phone on the desk still worked, its cord twisted from years of use. Amara pulled out the card tucked deep in her wallet, the one Harvey Whitmore had left her, embossed with his name in austere silver print. Her hand hovered over the dial. A dozen doubts flooded in. He gave you this mess. He walked away. He'll tell you to let it go. He won't risk himself again. But another voice answered, steady and quiet. He owes you truth, and you owe yourself a chance. She dialed. The line rang 3 times before a familiar voice, low and weary, answered, Whitmore. Harvey, it's Amara. A pause. Then a breath. I wondered when you'd call. She wasted no time. I need to know, did you suspect what Briggs was doing? Did you know about Cain's silence stretched long enough that Amara thought he might hang up? Finally, Harvey spoke. I suspected, yes. But I convinced myself it wasn't my problem. I had other properties, other fires to put out. So I looked away. Her jaw tightened and left me holding the ashes. You're right, Harvey admitted, and I'm sorry. But tell me, Amara, why are you still standing there if the fire's so hot most people would have walked? She glanced at the ledger spread across her desk. The initials V, K, stark against faded ink. Because walking away means letting men like Cain keep winning. And I'm tired of watching them win. There was no pity in Harvey's sigh this time. Only resolve. Then let me help. I know people who don't owe Cain anything. People who can push where it hurts. Journalists, she asked. Yes, one in particular. Sarah Monroe. She doesn't scare easy. If you trust me, I'll connect you. Trust. The word felt sharp, heavy. But Amara realized trust wasn't about certainty. It was about choosing courage in the absence of it. Do it, she said. 2 days later, Amara sat in a booth at a quiet diner 3 blocks from the hotel. The overhead lights buzzed, casting yellow halos on the cracked vinyl seats. Across from her sat Sarah Monroe, trench coat draped neatly beside her, press badge clipped to the collar. I've read your notes, Sarah said, stirring her tea. This isn't small. Amara, if I run this story, it won't just touch Cain. It'll ripple across banks, vendors, maybe even politicians. Amara kept her gaze steady. If they're guilty, let them fall. I didn't ask for this war, but I'm not going to hide from it. Sarah studied her for a long moment, then slid a small recorder onto the table. Start from the beginning, every detail, for the next 2 hours. Amara poured out the story, the drunken billionaire, the transfer papers, the false vendors, The sabotage. Kane's midnight threats. Sarah listened without interruption, her pen scratching notes, her eyes flickering sharp at each mention of Kane's name. When Amara finished, her voice cracked slightly. "I'm not a hero. I just wanted a safe place to work. Now I'm standing in the middle of something bigger than I ever imagined." Sarah leaned forward, her voice calm but fierce. "Heroes don't volunteer for the job. They rise when the moment demands. You didn't choose this, Amara, but you're here. That counts. For the first time in weeks." Amara felt something close to relief. Not safety, not victory, but the weight of carrying the truth had shifted, shared now with someone who could wield it. Back at the hotel that night, she found Daniel waiting in the lobby. "How did it go?" he asked. "She's in," Amara replied simply. Daniel nodded, but worry clouded his eyes. Then the storm's about to hit harder. He wasn't wrong. By Thursday, whispers began circulating. Strangers loitered near the hotel entrance, asking odd questions. A black sedan idled across the street for hours at a time. Guests reported anonymous phone calls warning them not to book at the Velvet Lantern. Lena confronted Amara in the kitchen. "They're tightening the noose. You sure this is worth it?" Amara placed her hands on the counter, steadying herself. "I'm sure of one thing. If we stop now, everything we've endured, the sabotage, the fear, the threats, it'll mean nothing. But if we keep going, maybe it'll mean change." Her voice wavered, just for a heartbeat, but then grew firmer. "And I can live with risk. I can't live with silence." That night, she sat alone in her apartment above the laundromat. The hum of dryers below filled the silence like a lullaby. On her table lay Sarah's card and Harvey's note from weeks ago. "You gave a stranger dignity. Let this give you the same." Amara pressed her palm over it, whispering to the empty room. "This has to count for something. It has to." Sunday morning began with silence, the kind of silence that holds its breath before thunder. Amara Johnson sat at the front desk of the Velvet Lantern, sipping a cup of black coffee that had already gone cold. On the counter lay a folded newspaper, delivered just before dawn. She hadn't opened it yet. She didn't need to. Her phone had already buzzed nonstop with messages from unknown numbers. But the weight of the paper felt different, solid, undeniable. With a slow breath, she unfolded it. There it was, splashed across the front page of the Bronx Gazette local hotel at center of multi-million-dollar laundering scheme fraud network tied to businessman Victor Kane. Amara's eyes swept the column, heart racing. Sarah Monroe hadn't held back. Every detail was there. Briggs's fake vendors, the consistent invoices, the receipt with Kane's initials. Charts connected shell companies to offshore accounts. There was even a grainy photo of the Velvet Lantern's front doors, captioned, "Hotel at the Heart of Scandal." Within hours, the phones rang off the hook. Some callers wanted to book rooms, morbid curiosity drawing them in. Others shouted threats before slamming down the line. By noon, 2 unmarked police cars pulled up outside. Guests whispered in the lobby as detectives stepped through the doors. "Miss Johnson," one asked, flashing a badge. "That's me." They led her into the office. Their questions were sharp but professional. Why had she started looking into the vendors? How did she obtain the ledger? Had she been threatened? Amara answered honestly, sliding across duplicates of every file she'd saved. When she handed over Victor Kane's sleek black card, one detective raised an eyebrow. "Not many people hold on to evidence like this," he said. Amara met his gaze. Not many people get a second chance to tell the truth. When they left, half the staff had gathered in the lobby, watching nervously. Amara stepped out, raising her voice. "Just enough I'm not in trouble. But the people who use this hotel for crime, They are. A collective sigh filled the room, relief mixed with pride. For a brief moment, the Velvet Lantern felt less like a hotel and more like a fortress of resilience. But resilience didn't stop retaliation. That night, a brick shattered one of the front windows. Miguel Ortiz ran outside, but the street was empty. 2 days later, a guest received a threatening letter slipped under their door. On Thursday, the black sedan that had lingered across the street suddenly screeched away when police patrols passed. Victor Kane hadn't disappeared. He was regrouping. Late one evening, Amara sat in the dining room with Sarah Monroe, nursing decaf coffee. The journalist studied her with sharp eyes. "You realize what you've done, right? This isn't just about a hotel anymore. You've pulled a thread that could unravel an entire network." Amara stirred her cup slowly. "I didn't plan to pull anything. I just wanted honesty. A clean start. But if that means exposing rot, so be it." Sarah leaned closer, her voice quiet but fierce. "That kind of conviction paints a target on your back." "Are you ready for that?" Amara hesitated, then answered with the calm of someone who had already wrestled with fear and chosen anyway. "I'm not ready, but I'm willing." The next morning, news vans lined the curb. Reporters shouted questions as Amara stepped outside Miss Johnson. "How does it feel to run the hotel at the center of this scandal? Do you fear for your safety? What do you say to claims that you're exaggerating to make yourself look good?" Her pulse pounded, but she stood tall, speaking clearly. "This isn't about me. It's about truth. The Velvet Lantern isn't a crime scene. It's a place of healing. And I won't let its past define its future." The clip aired on local television that night, then spread online. Within 24 hours, Amara's name trended on social media. Some hailed her as courageous. Others dismissed her as naive. But one truth had become undeniable: she could no longer be ignored. Inside the hotel, the staff rallied. Jenny Alvarez began arriving early, reorganizing supply closets with renewed energy. Lena Carter baked trays of cornbread for everyone who stayed late. Daniel Brooks manned the phones with a steady calm that steadied even Amara's nerves. Still, quiet moments betrayed her, alone in her apartment. She sometimes stared at the ceiling, heart thudding with questions. What if Kane strikes harder? What if I put everyone at risk? What if I'm not enough to win this fight? But then she'd remember the night she dragged Harvey Whitmore from the rain. The moment she chose action over fear. She'd whisper to herself, "If I could carry him off that street, I can carry this hotel through the storm." On Friday evening, the Velvet Lantern hosted its first open community meeting. Dozens of neighbors crowded into the lobby, drawn by curiosity and solidarity. Amara stood before them, her voice carrying over the murmur of voices and clinking cups. "This building has seen shadows," she said. "But shadows don't last when enough people bring light. I can't fight Kane alone. But together, we can turn this place into something no one can corrupt again." Applause rose, tentative at first, then steady, filling the cracked ceiling with sound. For the first time since the storm began, Amara felt a flicker of peace. She didn't know what Kane's next move would be, but she knew hers: keep standing, keep fighting, keep choosing truth. Because silence, she had learned, was the one weapon she would never hand him. The night of the community meeting had left Amara Johnson buoyed by hope. But the next morning reality struck again. A subpoena arrived at the front desk. Victor Kane's lawyers were suing her personally for defamation, demanding damages in the millions. Daniel Brooks laid the envelope on her desk. His jaw clenched. "He's coming at you from every side now." Amara looked at the crisp legal letter, her chest tightening. For a moment, The temptation to give in whispered through her mind. You could settle, walk away, start fresh somewhere else. But then she saw the faces of her staff, her neighbors who had filled the lobby with applause. Harvey's tired eyes when he told her he'd looked away too long. She heard her own voice echo from weeks ago. I can live with risk. I can't live with silence. She stood tall. Then we fight in the open. That afternoon, Sarah Monroe published a follow-up article exposing Cain's lawsuit as a classic intimidation tactic. Within hours, the public narrative shifted. Amara wasn't just a whistleblower. She was a woman standing against corporate bullying. Support poured in from community leaders, activists, even national figures who had once ignored the Bronx. By evening, the Velvet Lantern was buzzing with reporters again. The air smelled of coffee and fried plantains Lena Carter had baked for the staff. Outside, candles flickered as neighbors held a vigil, chanting softly, "Stand with Amara. Stand with truth." Victor Cain chose that moment to appear. He stepped from a black SUV, flanked by two suited men. Cameras swiveled, reporters surged forward, and there, under the flash of lights, Cain raised his voice for the first time in public. "This hotel is a den of lies," he declared smoothly. "And this woman," he pointed at Amara, "is nothing but a fraud seeking attention." Gas rippled through the crowd. But before Amara could speak, Sarah Monroe's voice rang out from the press line. "If she's a fraud, Mr. Cain, why are your initials on payments to shell companies tied to this address?" The microphone swung. The camera zoomed. Cain's smile faltered just enough for the crowd to notice. Amara stepped forward, her voice steady. "I didn't want this fight, but you brought it to my doorstep. And now, everyone sees you for what you are. You can threaten me. You can sue me. You can try to break this building, but you cannot bury the truth." The crowd erupted, cheers mingling with shouted questions. Cain turned sharply, retreating to his SUV. For the first time, Amara saw fear in his eyes. Within days, federal investigators moved in. Subpoenas were issued, bank accounts frozen, Briggs located and taken into custody. Cain's empire cracked open under the weight of scrutiny, and the Velvet Lantern shifted from scandal to symbol. But the true transformation came weeks later, when the hotel reopened under a new name. The staff gathered in the lobby, the old chandelier replaced with a radiant glass lantern that cast warm light across the room. Amara stood on the stairs, voice carrying over the crowd. "This place has been called many things, but today we give it a new name, a new future. Welcome to the Beacon House, a place to belong." Applause shook the rafters. Neighbors embraced. Guests lined up at the desk. Lena wiped tears from her cheeks, muttering, "We did it." Later that night, Amara sat alone in the quiet lobby, gazing at the glowing lantern above. She thought of the night she'd found Harvey Whitmore slumped on the curb, the moment everything began. She thought of Maria's trembling hands when she handed over the receipt, of Daniel's steady presence, of Sarah's fierce pen cutting through lies. She thought of her own fear, the countless nights she nearly gave up, and she realized something she hadn't won because she was fearless. She had won because she refused to let fear make her silent. Harvey visited a week later, leaning on his cane, but smiling brighter than she had ever seen. "You've done what I never could," he said, sweeping a hand at the bustling lobby. "You turned ashes into a flame." Amara shook her head softly. "Not me. Us. A flame only burns if many hands guard it." He nodded, his eyes misting. "Then keep guarding it. The world needs places like this." As Harvey left, Amara whispered to herself, letting the words settle deep into the marrow of her being, the beacon will stand. Outside, the lantern glowed against the Bronx night, a promise of belonging no storm could snuff out again. At its heart, this story is not about hotels or money. It is about dignity, resilience, and the power refusing to be silent in the face of injustice. Amara Johnson reminds us that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to act even when fear is overwhelming. For older generations especially, her journey echoes a truth many of us know too well. Life often presents us with impossible choices: to speak or to stay quiet, to endure or to resist. Amara's choice to resist shows us that integrity, though costly, leaves a legacy far greater than comfort ever could. The lesson we can carry into our own lives is simple but profound. No one wins alone. Amara's strength came not just from within, but from those who stood beside her, her co-workers, her allies, her community. We are reminded that when people choose truth together, even the most powerful forces cannot erase it. In our daily lives, we too can choose to guard small flames of honesty and kindness, and in doing so, we may one day see them grow into beacons strong enough to light the way for others. Thank you so much for sharing your time and your heart with this story. If it moved you, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue bringing stories of dignity, courage, and hope to life. Stay with us, more journeys await.